Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Center for Leadership and Empowerment seminar series. I know you're all very busy people, but you've taken time off your busy schedule to join us on this very special occasion. So we are very, very grateful for that. Normally, we're not expecting any alarm, any fire drill. So if you hear any fire, drill, if the alarm goes off, rather, know that it's coming from your end, okay? So we're not expecting any drill from this end. So unfortunately, no snacks on this occasion, but hopefully when next we organize a session face-to-face, we'll be able to provide some snacks. So today we have a very special session. I think this is our 6th seminar in a row. The previous sessions have been very different. It's been about different speakers presenting and then questions and answers. But on this occasion, we have a very special session, which is titled In Conversation with Dr. Deborah Lawson. Dr. Deborah Lawson is a celebrated and multi-award winning disability advocate. Okay, and Dr. Deborah Lawson will share her insights from her journey, her advocacy work, and her vision of empowering people with disability in today's world. But before we delve into Dr. Deborah Lawson's biography, I would just like to invite Professor Kristen Harrison, the Center Director, to give us a word.
Hey, thanks very much, Lawrence, for the introduction, and thanks everybody for coming. I know it's at this time of the year, everybody thinking about Christmas, just like I'm thinking about Christmas right now, and a lot of people are busy, so we understand. But of course, we expect more people to join. Like Lawrence rightly pointed out, welcome to our seminar series, the Center for Leadership and Empowerment series, and we're starting an In Conversation series, and this is our first of many to come. But I strongly felt that the first person that should start it is the person that we're talking about today, because she's a renowned person. She's a strong role model and a very inspiring person to everyone, including me. But don't worry, you'll get to know by the time we talk about it. But firstly, I would like to say thank you, Dr. Deborah, for accepting our invitation. When I told Dr. Deborah that, oh, I want you to do this, said, yes, Christian, it will be my pleasure to do this. And she's here today. So it's a huge privilege and honor to have you here. But of course, for everybody that has been involved, we're so happy to have you. And in our center, what we try to do is we empower people, and we also lead from the front. So we're so excited to have you here. And as the center director, it's a pleasure to be leading this center and, of course, working with a fabulous team. I always say that leadership is not about me, but it's about we. And it's the only reason why we have been able to do well, because we all work together as a team. So thanks everybody that has come in today. And of course, our guest today, Dr. Deborah, and of course, Lawrence. So that's it.
Thank you very much, Professor Kristen Harrison, for that warm welcome. Before we delve into today's session, I would just like to say a few words about Dr. Deborah Lawson, our key act for today. Dr. Deborah Lawson is a wheelchair user and a multi-award winning disability advocate recognized as one of the most influential disabled change makers in the UK. After becoming disabled, Deborah was shocked by the exclusion and discrimination disabled people face in every aspect of life. Determined to reduce these barriers for others and create lasting change, she has dedicated her life to advocating for a more inclusive society. Her significant, wide-reaching, and long-standing contributions to EDI have improved the lives of hundreds of thousands of disabled people nationwide. Deborah's impact spans healthcare, retail, fashion, housing, community, disabled rights, people reform, accessibility improvement, transforming attitudinal barriers, peer support, disability awareness training and resources, and promoting inclusion through children's literature. Over 2 decades, Deborah has advocated for thousands of disabled people and their families. She's transformed thousands of buildings, organizations, and events nationwide, enhancing accessibility and facilities for countless individuals. She's tackled attitudinal barriers through comprehensive training programs in over 600 large stores. As a former stylist who worked with world-renowned photographers, her accessible fashion guidance is used in over 500 major stores, and she provided in-depth resources to thousands more, ensuring widespread adoption. She's a member of the regional stakeholder network reporting to the government on policies affecting disabled people. Deborah is also a judge for numerous nationwide global awards and serves on various panels, including the Housing Ombudsman. She has spoken to official local government events on the BBC and to audiences of over 1,500, regularly featuring in the media as a trailblazer on extraordinary woman who has done amazing things, and a kind, strong, exceptional role model. Deborah also closely works with local government on all aspects of disability awareness. She chairs a council advisory group, improving accessibility for thousands of disabled residents, focusing on reviewing consultation and policies, enhancing council services and communications, increasing disability awareness, creating guides, and making events, transport, businesses, and outdoor spaces more accessible. Thousands of businesses use Deborah's resources and reports, and the council has distributed her disability awareness guide to over 12,000 households. This winter, Deborah is also releasing a children's book called Damson's Friendship Wish, which promotes inclusion and encourages kindness and self-acceptance. A portion of the profits from sales will be used to donate copies of the book to ensure as many children as possible can benefit from its positive message. Deborah collaborates with Oxford University Center for Research Equity, addressing health inequalities through more inclusive practices, and serves on its governance board. She's a member of the trial steering committee for the largest worldwide COVID-19 therapeutics trial, and a committee member of co-applicant for an upcoming major study seeking treatments for individuals at risk of respiratory illness, aiming to improve health outcomes for thousands of disabled individuals. In fact, I can go on and on and on and on and talk about Deborah's long and distinguished profile, but on this occasion, I would like to stop here. Please, ladies and gentlemen, join me to welcome Dr. Deborah Lawson to the stage to take us on an exciting journey with Professor Christian Harrison. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Lawrence, for that. I like, oh wow, it's never going to end. Like, okay, the Bible is too much, really. So, of course, I know Dr. Deborah is so humble, but I'm happy that we just had a glimpse. But one thing you didn't say, I'll still say much about it later. But a lot of things that Deborah has achieved, you didn't even highlight it there, and we spent almost like 5 minutes talking about her bio, and there's so much. That just show you how, of course, how great her impact has been over time. But of course, it's going to be an in-conversation. So what's going to happen is I'll be talking to Dr. Deborah, and I'll be asking her some questions. Then feel free after that, then people can ask questions to Deborah, anything you want to ask based on her experience. That's why you're all here. She's here, and she's a clean book, and she will be able to motivate and inspire us today. But either way, thanks very much, Dr. Deborah, for joining us, and it's a pleasure to have you here. Like I said, it's a huge honor and a privilege to have you in the center. So thank you for joining us first.
Yeah, thank you so much for asking me. It's such an honor to be here, and it's so lovely to be amongst everybody. Yeah, a real honor. Thank you for having me.
Okay, thanks, Dr. Deborah. One of the things that we know, you've won so many awards. I think the first time we met was when you won the Woman of Courage Award. That was over a year now, and it looks like yesterday. And you won the award. You won the Person with Purpose Award. You've been given an award by the Prime Minister. Recently, you won the Woman of the Year Award in Manchester. Yeah. You're now Dr. Deborah, so you have an honorary doctorate as well. So you have so many. So just, can you share your journey with us and tell us what inspired you really to become the advocate for disability rights? Because you're the voice. So just tell us more about what you've gone through.
Yeah, of course. So it began in my teens. So I became disabled, and it was an enormous shock to me because overnight I suddenly found that I was completely shut out from society. The difference in my life was night and day difference. And it felt like I was living in a different world. I was faced with endless barriers. You know, I could no longer get into shops. I could no longer just go to somebody's house. But it wasn't just physical barriers either that I faced as a wheelchair user. It was the way that I was treated. You know, you don't realise that you have privilege till that privilege is being taken away from you. You know, and I found that I was dehumanised. You know, people massively underestimated me. You know, when I went out, everybody stared at me. I was quite a shy girl, and I was sort of like to go past without anybody looking at me, you know, and suddenly everybody looked at me. And you know, at the time it was such a strange feeling, because I kept thinking to myself, how can I be so visible yet so invisible at exactly the same time? You know, and for the first sort of 6 months or so, I just cried. You know, I would go out within 10-15 minutes, I'd be in tears, and I'd say, we have to go home. I cannot cope with the way that I'm being treated, you know. And then I started to sort of take it in and look around, and I realized that actually millions of people were living in this way, you know. And that horrified me, because I realized that actually this is a problem that's hidden in plain sight. And immediately, you know, I thought to myself, why have I never seen this? Why have these conversations not been had? You know, it was before the age of social media. So I thought, why are those conversations, why weren't they had with me in education? Why have I been able to get to my teens and being completely unaware that a section of society are being treated in this way? And it was so awful that I just knew that I had to stop it happening for others, because I just thought they have to have a better life than the one that I'm having right now. And I also thought we have to stop this for future generations. We have to do something. And there wasn't anybody there doing that. So I thought, I've got to do it. I've got to speak up. So advocacy in that way, you know, I never looked out to become an advocate. It almost found me, because there was nobody else there doing it. So I just thought, I've got to be that first person to start that ball rolling.
Thank you very much, Deborah, for that. And one of the things that you said that really touched me is like, you cried. You were visible but invincible. And it's one of the things that we tend to see, like many times when you don't experience something, you don't really know how it feels. And in your case, that experience, that lived experience, is something that has pushed you. Can you tell us more about the big challenges that you faced really, and how you were able to overcome them? Because of course you have faced a lot of challenges over the years.
Yeah, of course. So initially, you know, I thought, well, I can't get in anywhere, and I saw this happening everywhere. You know, I would go out and I would see groups of friends and they'd leave their friend in a wheelchair sat outside and they'd all go into a coffee shop, you know. And I thought, this is terrible. I can't allow this to happen, you know. So I thought, right, I've got to tackle businesses, organisations, institutions. I have to tell them, you know, that we have to make things accessible for people. Everybody should be included. So I worked really, really hard. And I campaigned for it. You know, I was met with a lot of resistance, but at the time I didn't care. I thought this is the right thing to do. And I ensured that places were ramped, that they had accessible fitting rooms, that there was better signage, better lighting, you know, whatever it was that people needed, I went out my way to make sure they had it. And, you know, this went on for quite a while, and I thought, I've done it, you know, I've fixed the problem, you know, and then I looked around and I realised actually people were still invisible. You know, people were still being excluded, you know, and I sort of sat back and I thought, well, I've done all this. What have I missed? You know? And that's when it kind of occurred to me that actually the bigger problem is societal attitudes. And it reminded me that it was almost like I was pulling out weeds. So the weeds were the physical barriers and the roots were the societal attitudes. So I was coming along and I was clearing them all out, and it looked great, you know. But what you couldn't see was the roots were still there. So I was fixing things temporarily. And if I didn't actually tackle the core of the problem, those weeds will just come back. The problem will return because I'm not actually dealing with the core of it, people's biases, you know, and people's ableism. And that felt quite overwhelming because I thought, how do we fix something that we can't even see, you know, that is so ingrained in people, in the media and everywhere. You know, and I was having a lot of success with the kind of the physical barriers and things. But I realized that because I was young, I was female, I was disabled, it was 10 times harder for me to be heard because of these attitudes. And I knew that I had to make a bigger impact. I knew that it had to go beyond just the Northwest. I knew that I had to make a big difference because the longer that I became disabled, the bigger I realized that these problems actually were. So I decided to, you know, nobody gave me a seat at the table. Nobody wanted to open those doors for me. Nobody wanted to give me handouts. You know, I had gone to a selective school. I'd gone to a grammar school. I was used to almost people saying, no, come on, Deborah, you know, we want your input, to suddenly being a disabled female where everybody was like, I'm not interested. You know, what do you know? You're disabled, you know. So I thought, okay, I've got to get my seat at that table however I can, you know. So I found one of the hardest degrees that I could find. And I did stand up for a degree in counter fraud and criminal justice. And I thought, okay, that will help get me some credibility, you know, to get my place. And just before I started my degree, I had an accident and it left me bedbound for a number of years, and I was unable to sit up. So the university said to me, you know, look, you can't do a degree in agony on your back, you know, you will have to defer. And I was determined, and I thought, well, I'm going to be lay on my back anyway. You know, I've got two choices. I either study or I stare at the ceiling, you know. So we got a pole at the side of my bed, and we had it sort of, we attached another pole over the top like this, and we screwed a screen over to the top of the pole. And I spent 5 years studying on my back in agony, which was incredibly hard. You know, I would never paint that as an easy journey, because it wasn't. You know, I had to lots of apple crumble to keep me going, you know. But I ended up graduating at the top of my class with a first class honours, and also qualified as a graduate counter fraud specialist, which is the highest award for a counter fraud professional. And I also, at the time, I also was able to choose specialisms within my degree, and I chose hate crime, which was so insightful because it taught me about not just what I was experiencing, it taught me about what hate crime, completely what everybody was experiencing. So by me doing the degree, just sort of, it riled me up even more about the injustice that people were facing. And it just made me even worse, it just made me think, no, I'm so passionate now, I can't just ignore this, and that grit and determination that I used to do that degree is what I use in my advocacy, and so many people have said to me, how are you so successful? How have you had the success that you have? And I would never say that it's success, I'd say that it's perseverance, because I don't give up. I have this dogged determination that, it doesn't matter if something takes me 4 years to get success with, I am going to keep going for that 4 years. So in the end, the business, the organization, in the end, they might as well just go, all right, okay, we're going to change, because I'm not going to give up. And that really has been the secret of my success, to do that. But I would definitely say that the degree I did was a bit of a pivotal moment for me, because it did start sort of opening doors for me. But I also noticed that as a disabled woman, I had to almost go 10 times, although I wasn't being heard, I had to sort of almost do things 10 times more than other people just to get onto their level, which is something else now that I'm quite passionate about changing. It's ensuring that people's lived experiences are valued, because originally my lived experience wasn't enough to be heard. It's like you had to jump through hoops first for it to be valued, and I didn't agree with that.
Thanks, Deborah. I think of course, it's quite an emotional one, interview really, or conversation. Especially when you said you spent 5 years on your back, really, studying in the university. I know I studied, my first degree was pharmacy, and I know I'm just thinking about 5 years doing that on your back, and at the end, you still came out as with the first class and the best student of the university as well. And like you said, perseverance was key for you. And I think your story shows us that if you're determined, you can achieve anything. And so no matter what you're going through, it's that determination. And something that you said about providing a seat at the table, nobody did that for you, but you created your own table, like as we can see right now. So that's great. But clearly, going into the excellent work that you've been doing, maybe you can tell us much more about the work you're doing at the moment, because you've gone through a lot, the challenges that you're faced. But how has that informed the impactful work that has won you all these numerous accolades and awards and made you a huge inspiration to everybody?
I mean, yeah, my work has been so broad. So what I found myself quite unusual, because obviously when I started, there really wasn't many people doing this, EDI was taboo, and it was never something that was like an area of interest for me. I didn't think, okay, well, I'm really interested in this small area, I'm going to just promote that. I realized that actually, society was the problem, so I had to deal with society as a whole. So that's why my work has been as broad as it has, because whenever somebody has said, would you like a seat at the table? I'm like, of course, yes, please. I want to help. I want to change these things, because, ultimately, as I said, that root of that weed is there everywhere that needs dealing with, and by doing such broad work, it has given me such an insight, to so many different areas, not just health, not just government, not just local authority, not housing, but everybody. And it really is, the problems we have, they're absolutely everywhere. They are in ground everywhere. And through that, I've met and worked with incredible people. And I've been able to make real change, because all these different areas in life, there is problems, there is biases, there is ableism in every single facet of life. And for anybody that's not familiar with ableism, it is literally that disabled people are seen as less than, they are seen as inferior to non-disabled people, and that affects policies, that affects everything. And the world is inherently ableist, it is set up for non-disabled people, and it privileges non-disabled people, and it is about being able to get into those spaces, and just making things a little bit fairer, making things a little bit more equal, but for everybody, because injustice is injustice for everybody. That's something I very much learned, I think, when I was doing my degree. And I learned about hate crime and things, and it's something I recognized in myself that, injustice is injustice. It's not just one tiny little area, it just shouldn't happen. We are all equal. There shouldn't be this hierarchy, of people. Yeah. And so for me, that is very much what drives me. And I've always sort of said I'll continue until my work's not needed. When I'm not needed, wonderful, but up until that point, I find I can't not do what I'm doing,
Definitely, we need you. We need you, Deborah. We need you. We need you for a long time. So I think we're gonna definitely have you here. But one thing you've said, and of course, this is a Center for Leadership and Empowerment. So we strongly believe in leadership. We strongly believe in empowerment, and that's why we're having the series, and of course in conversation as well. But as an award-winning advocate, what does leadership mean to you, really? What does it? Because the truth that many of the challenges that you're faced really links to leadership. So what do you think about leadership? What does it
Yeah.
really?
I mean, initially, I think for me, it's having the courage to challenge the status quo. Because it doesn't make you popular. I would say it's easier to do now than it was in the past, but it's having that courage to actually do it and know that, you are going to be judged for doing that, but you're doing the right thing regardless, It's having the courage to call out discrimination of any sort. And again, you are going to be made to feel like you are the problem for doing it, but it's having the courage to think it doesn't matter. I know I'm doing the right thing. And equally, it's recognizing and challenging your own biases. It's learning that we all have unconscious bias. And ensuring that we've got the courage to actually say to ourselves, where's this come from? And it's wrong, I'm a big believer in a person-centered approach as well, and empathy. I think we all have to sort of start from a place of empathy, and support, and encourage everybody around us, really. And as well, I think, we need to go beyond basic inclusion. We have to give disabled people opportunities to get that seat at the table, that has been denied for so long from them, to the point where a lot of disabled people don't even think that they deserve that seat anymore, and I believe as well that we all need to sort of remove the barriers in life so everybody can thrive. And I think as well, I think leadership is as much about listening as it is leading, because I think that all people have lived experiences and all their voices matter, because I think nobody has all the answers. And so everybody's story is valuable, and something that Professor Christian said, earlier about, leadership being about we, that's a huge belief for me as well. It's not about the person themselves, it's about the bigger picture, and for me, that's always been about societal change and making a lasting positive impact and, leaving something for the next generation. Because it's not self-focused. It's not just about what am I going to gain from it. It is about what you can do for others, the changes that you can make in society. For when you're long gone,
Thank you, Dr. Deborah. What you just gave, I'm going to cite you in my next book, clearly, because all the things you've said, these are the classic things you need about leadership. You spoke about courage. Leaders should be courageous, especially in today's world. We don't have leaders that can stand up to what they believe is right. And to me, it's so important. You said, okay, leaders have to be empathetic. They should be caring. And it's important. We can see, especially within the crisis, we didn't change. We need leaders that are able to be compassionate and also think about themselves, not just think about themselves, but about other people. You spoke about listening as well. So we need listening leaders, not the ones that just talk, but also listen to what people will say. And of course, we need leaders that can change the society. So Please, thank you so much for letting us know more about how you view leadership. But just going deeper into leadership, especially from trying to foster inclusivity and empowerment, how do you think that leaders can do that better? How do you think leaders can foster this and empower other individuals, especially people with disabilities as well?
I think that's a great question. I recently read that, disabled people are 60% more likely to feel excluded in the workplace compared to non-disabled people, so ensuring that we do support disabled people is so important, I think leading by example, firstly, is vital, because I think that, if a leader prioritises inclusion, I think that trickles down to the whole organisation. I also think it's absolutely vital to go beyond compliance. Too many people see EDI as a tick box exercise, and they do the bare minimum and think that's it, and that's not the end goal. For example, a restaurant could put a ramp in. Now that would just tick a box, but if that ramp is round the back in the middle of some bins and they can't go in, that person in the wheelchair cannot go in with all their friends in the front entrance, is that really inclusion? Have we really done the right thing there? Another example, building regulations, they have a turning circle for wheelchairs of 150 centimetres. So if they design a house with a turning circle of that size, they tick a box. My powered wheelchair is longer than that, so I actually can't even fit in their turning circle, but it would be allowed. So I think it's really important that we see compliance and the regulations as the absolute bare minimum. I think representation matters. I think we have to address the historic imbalance. I think we need to hire and empower and promote disabled leaders. But I think we also need to make sure that our hiring practices are inclusive. We have to make sure that jobs are going on inclusive job boards, job boards where disabled people are actually going to see them. Another statistic that I was reading recently was that 71% of disabled people, they said that they would thrive more at work if they saw disabled people in senior positions at work, So that's a win-win, because then you get a more productive team, I also think, that it's not enough just to have disabled people through the door. They need a seat at the table. They need a direction in your company. They need to have their say. We cannot be talking on behalf of marginalised groups. They need their own voice, because their input is so important. I also think we need measurable goals. I think that's really, really important. Because inclusion, it's a journey, it's not a destination. It's a bit like if you've got a plan, you can't just flick water at it occasionally and think it's going to thrive. You have to water it little and often, and then it will do well. It's not about just, we'll just do this one thing and we'll look good. It is about a constant journey with it. I think it needs embedding in training and policies as well. I heard somebody say recently that how upset they were because they started a new company, and they said that for all sorts of training, sort of sexual harassment and everything, they all had to do this training. And when it came to disability, it was an optional add-on. It was the only one that was an optional add-on at the end, so people weren't taking it. So I think it absolutely has to be standard, I also think, some people say, well, we haven't got anybody disabled in our team. And, if 1 in 4 of us have a disability, I think, well, you have, but they're just not feeling safe enough to disclose, and it's absolutely a personal choice if they want to disclose. But I think you've got to ask, am I creating a culture where they feel safe to disclose? Because a lot of the time people do not disclose because of the fear, the stigma, of the bias. Them not seeing people like them in leadership, fear of their job security, if they do actually disclose as well, I also think it should be standard, and it's terrible to still have to say this in 2024, but they need equitable pay. there is now, it rises every year, and there's a 17% pay gap between disabled people and non-disabled people, even though it costs disabled people on average £1,010 more a month to live, to have the same standard of living as non-disabled people. Yet it works out roughly that they're working almost 2 months of the year for free, because they do not get paid the same wages as non-disabled people do, you know. And in 2024, that is horrendous, you know. And I also think we need to be offering people flexible working, you know. I think that any policies that are for disabled people must be created with disabled people as well. You know, there's a saying in the community which, you know, I love, and it's nothing about us without us, you know, and I think we should always remember that for any sort of marginalised group, you know. We often, with EDI, we talk about equality, you know, ensuring that everybody gets the same thing. But I think it's especially important with disabled people that we focus on equity, you know, where everybody's going to get what they need to succeed, because we want everybody to have equal outcomes. And we need to recognise that with disability, there is diverse starting points, you know, but we want everybody to end in the same place, you know. I think it's really, really important to be supportive, you know, to listen and learn what other people need, because if you've not had that lived experience, you're not going to know. So, you know, never think that you've got the answers, but always be solution focused, you know. And I think as well, you know, finally, I think it is just a win-win, you know. Companies that champion disability inclusion, they have higher productivity and 30% higher profits, you know, so it's good business sense, you know. So to me, it's shocking when companies are not interested in doing it, because, you know, not only are we creating a fairer world, it benefits them as well.
Yeah, thank Deborah. And it's just what the statistics you proposed or you showed is quite shocking, really, especially with the pay gap, especially in today's world. You should think that disparity shouldn't be there, but unfortunately it's there. And I'm happy that you're doing all this, because what you're doing right now is to let people know this disparity and what we can do. Many organizations, like you said, they tend to do the EDI as a tick in the box exercise. But at the end, it's not the ramps and all that, they do it there. But at the end, can the wheelchairs go within it, or you just having it there just to tick the box? So that's one of the things that we need, and that's why we're doing this clearly, so that at least your voice here can let people know what we expect. But one thing that is also that you highlighted was about representation, because at the end, if we see those that are disabled having a seat on the table, the other disabled people will say, yes, I can see Dr. Deborah, so if she can make it, I can.
Exactly.
And so those things you said really are quite important to us. Don't worry, I know everybody wants to ask Deborah some questions, so just keep your questions. You have time to engage with Deborah, but just in the next few minutes, just to ask her more questions. But a lot of things you've said, and for me, it's important. Your advocacy work has been very has been impactful, like we already know, with all the awards and the impact you've made. But can you share with us the most rewarding moment, a particular time that you felt, yes, I have done this? I know we want you to keep doing what you're doing, but I'm sure there was a particular time that you felt, yes, I've been able to do what I want to do, and maybe the lessons that you can share with the audience as well through your.
Yeah, so I mean, I think so for me, rather than rewarding for me, it's very much what's been a win for the sort of the broader society, I think. And like I said earlier about, you know, societal attitudes were my initial biggest challenges. And I would say the societal shift has probably been one of my most rewarding things that I've done. Although I must say that we have such a long way to go, and it is being incredibly slow. You know, it is snail's pace. But, you know, I had so much early resistance. Anybody that was talking about EDI, you know, it was the late 90s, early 2000s, you know, it was taboo. You know, I was seen as the problem, you know, I was seen with the thorn in everybody's side, you know, and now those same organisations come to me and seek my advice. You know, I'm no longer seen as the problem. They see me as part of the solution. And that has been a real, because I've been doing it sort of 25 years, that has been a real moment for me to see that change, because it was so hard. I mean, now there is many more advocates doing it. When I started, you know, I mean, I've been sort of recognised as one of the early pioneers of doing it. When I did it, you just didn't do it, you know, it was not the sensible choice, because you were treated so badly for speaking up, for wanting equality for people, you know, and places now, they come to me and they want my input, you know, and that is the key to success, because if places are open to it, you know, because they don't realize, so many people don't realize that if you're defensive, and that resistance to change, it's just another invisible barrier. And, you know, marginalised groups have so many barriers anyway. That resistance is just one extra barrier that they're putting there, you know. And I'd also say that, you know, as you said, I'm absolutely humbled when I win an award or I am recognised by an institution. It always comes as a huge shock to me, because I'm not a big poster on social media. You know, I'm not a content creator. I tend to do things behind the scenes. And when they support me and get behind me, you know, it causes a broader ripple effect. And that sends a really powerful message to society that, you know what, inclusion really matters, you know. And I've seen that inspire others to be really curious about the value of inclusion. I've seen it start conversations, and I've seen it shift mindsets and start seeing diversity as a strength. You know, when I go to events, people will come up to me, you know, they'll ask me, they'll say, you know, tell me more about your work. I think we can do better as a company, you know, and they'll think, well, you know, if that university supports you, well, if those awards bodies supports you, maybe we should do this, you know. And I've seen the difference that that's made, and it sort of really kind of makes my heart really happy, because I think this isn't about me. This isn't about me winning something. This is about society. This is about what that award then has gone on to do for more people, you know, the more sort of attention that it's brought to the cause, you know. So I would say that that probably is some of the most rewarding things that I've done. Lessons wise, you know, I mean, I've learned so many lessons. Yeah, I mean, some of the lessons, one of the key things I think is that the barriers in society, and in our environment, are disabling people much more than their impairments are. And by that, I mean that, you know, we think about steps, narrow doorways, digital inaccessibility, attitudes, you know, all these things are being constructed. Somebody chose to put those steps in. Somebody chose to make a doorway too narrow and shut people out. So all those things must be dismantled, you know, because the world is inherently ableist, you know, and it is not designed for disabled people. And every single day, disabled people have to face a hierarchy of who is worthy of inclusion, you know, and we have to do something about that. I think as well, I've learned that everybody's needs are different. You know, if you've met one wheelchair user, you have met one wheelchair user. You know, the next person is not going to be the same. You know, we need tailored approaches. We need to be able to actually talk to people and say, what is it you need? You know, this should be a normal conversation where we feel comfortable to go to somebody and say, you know, how can I best support you? You know, what can I do to you know, make your time more comfortable? You know, I think we have to be intentional as well about inclusion. I think that's really important, because I think we should always make sure that teams are representative to the community, and that, you know, our teams don't just look like ourselves. They have to contain everybody, you know, to get a really diverse voice, you know. Change is painfully slow, unfortunately. You know, a lot of disabled people will say that disability is the forgotten minority. We are the ones that are lagging behind. We're the ones that are struggling the most, you know. So you do have to stay persistent. You do have to push, you know, because it is painfully slow, unfortunately. I have seen changes, but not at the speed that I would have thought that they would have happened, you know. I also think we need to start in schools. We need to have those conversations with our children. We need to be talking to them. You know, that's one reason why I wrote the book I wrote. When I went to school, these were not conversations we had, and that was shocking for me. You know, so yeah, I wrote a book about a little deer with wonky antlers, you know, and he tries to copy other people, you know, he tries to be the same as what everybody else is. And in the end, his lesson is that he's fine as he is. And we, you know, everybody loves him as he is when he's himself. And that's, you know, I'm going to be using the profits to donate more and more and more of the books. So as many children as possible can read that, and they can have that confidence that, you know what, they are enough. Because, you know, I became disabled in my teens, and even as a teen, and a lot of people, they have internalized ableism. They are made to feel less than. They are made to feel that being disabled is something to be very, very shameful about, you know. And I don't want anybody to feel those feelings that I feel. And if I can sort of make sure that those conversations are had in classrooms and they're had at a young age, I think that is the time to catch children. So it's just normal, you know. And I think as well, it's really important that we don't do selective inclusion. And by that, I mean, so, you know, I was reading recently, apparently 90% of companies consider EDI in, you know, however, only 4% of those include disability in their EDI initiatives. Which to me is just shocking, because I think if you do EDI, you're meant to be doing it all. Everybody should be included. That's the point of it, you know. So to me, it's really ironic that even within EDI, there is a hierarchy of who's more worthy than another of being included. And that to me is something else that I want to stop and ensure that, you know, we're all equal. You know, everybody that has barriers needs to have those barriers removed, you know.
Thanks very much, Deborah, for what you've said. And it's clear, one of the things that you said was many times people are disabled, but they're ashamed to even talk about it because there's no safe space for them to do that. And clearly, we're looking forward to your book. So let us know when it's published so we can have a book launch. So because the book really, because the truth is, we are here and we're talking to you. Of course, this is going to be on social media, but a book can reach out to so many people. So we're so happy that your book, and you can see the kind of person you are, because you're using the profit. You're not using it to make, it's not because you want the money, but you're going to put the profit in and plow it back. So well done for that. But one thing
I've actually got this is the cover of it. I mean, it's only a proof copy. I'm not sure whether you can actually see it with my
yeah, you can see that.
Can you see it? Just about, it's a little deer that has wonky antlers, that just feels different, because then I thought then children can relate to it, because so many children don't feel like they quite belong, but they're not quite sure why, you know. And I think it's so important that they learn that regardless, they are perfect, you know, just as they are. They just need to be themselves and not have that internalized shame.
Yeah, and you said it yourself. You got disabled while in your teens, and you've lived all your teens and of course your adult life being disabled. But one thing, what advice would you give disabled people, the ones that are, of course, ashamed or concerned about revealing their disabilities, and aspire to become advocates and leaders like you? What advice will you give to them? Now, this is you advising the disabled people too.
So I'd say, firstly, be authentic, be yourselves. You don't have to be like anybody else. You know, trust in your lived experience, you know, because that is your strength. Your story is valuable. And if somebody doesn't want to hear that story, that's on them. That's not a reflection of you, you know. I think it can be incredibly hard to live with disabilities, incredibly tiring. And you get a lot of challenges, you get a lot of setbacks, but that's normal, you know. And you can often get derailed, you know. But I think, know that when you get derailed, don't let it put you off, because there are many paths that can still get you success. There are many paths that can still take you to your goal. You just might not see it at the time. Keep moving forward. You know, you don't know where that's going to lead. I'd say it's really important not to compare yourself to others, because that's something that I think most of us do anyway. But I think when you're disabled and you see people who can go at a faster pace than you or anything like that, it can be quite heartbreaking, you know. So I'm a huge believer that we all rise together, you know. I don't believe in being in competition with anybody, you know. I think we should all be each other's greatest supporters and help each other rise. And and as I was saying sort of before, really about the shame, don't internalize shame. If somebody makes you feel less than or doesn't include you, that shame belongs to those who have done that to you. That's not your shame, and you must recognize that, because you will carry that shame, but it's not yours. Put it back to who, to where it belongs to, and that's the same for, I think, anybody really that experiences any sort of discrimination, any sort of exclusion. That's not your shame.
Thank you, thank you. There were the two things you said, authenticity, isn't it? You need to be authentic, you need to be yourself. And it's
Yeah,
going to be difficult. Of course, in today's world, people want to compare. You tell the kids, you should do better than this person, you should run better than this person. But it's difficult for somebody that is disabled to compare, because who are you going to compare yourself with? So
exactly.
I'm happy that you're saying this, because of course, I'm sure even amongst the attendees here, I know your words like, okay, yes, I'm disabled, but I can't say anything. So please listen to what Deborah is saying today, that you don't compare yourself to somebody else, because everybody has his own journey or her own journey. And of course, it's
Exactly.
that you're authentic, because authenticity is very, very important. I know we are running out of time, so I will just ask just one more question before I leave the audience to ask our amazing guest today questions that they would like to share with her. But for me, it's just one message really, and that you strongly believe that we should leave this session with. I know we have spoken a lot, but if there's one thing that you believe that yes, it's so important to you, what would that be?
If it was just one message, I think that really we must all take responsibility to address the historic imbalance that's excluded marginalised people. We've all got to actively work to readdress this, and I think accessibility, it's got to be at the heart of EDI initiatives. It's not just another aspect of inclusion, it's the very foundation. Because, without accessibility, many disabled people, they can't get to that table, and they can't even have that conversation in the first place.
Thank you so much, Deborah, for being with me and talking with me about your own life experience. For me, this is one of the most touching interviews or conversations I've had, and because of just knowing what you've gone through, knowing what you've been through, and how you've been able to achieve the things you've achieved, despite adversity, despite everything that you've gone through, it's a pleasure for you, and I'm happy that you've been open with us, because many people don't share these kind of experiences. They're usually drawn aback, but just giving us the platform to say this with you, I think it's a huge privilege. So thank you so much for doing that. But now it's up to people to ask questions, and I can see Joanne
Thank
wants to
you.
ask you a question. Thank
That
you.
was quick, wasn't it? Deborah, thank you so much. How inspirational. I'm Joan Smith. I'm the head of school for health and society. So we do a lot around kind of disability awareness and health, in the kind of health and social work. But what I wanted to say really is I'm a sibling of a disabled brother. So my older brother was born with cerebral palsy. He's a wheelchair user, and he has been all his life. And that's why I do what I do. If somebody was to say to me, "How did you get to where you are and doing what you do?" It's really because of him. And it's so amazing, really, to hear what a great advocate you are, because of how challenging, what I know, what my parents have been through, what my family's been through at a time, really, when nobody was listening and nobody cared, and their institutions were disabled people lived in the UK, and it's like a, despicable kind of treatment of people. But really talking about, even in today's context, that kind of, the social exclusion, it's very political, really, what you're doing, isn't it? And I think it's also, it worries me that some of what's been achieved is actually being eroded by some of the discussions, really. So I don't know what you think about that, but I want to say, it's amazing and great work. You've done amazing. So, but I do think, the whole idea about kind of society's views, I think there's a a kind of undercurrent of almost some things are getting worse rather than better, which is so I don't know if that's a question or a statement, but yeah.
Well, I mean, thank you so much for your kind words. And it's amazing to hear you be such a strong ally, really, as well. You know, that I think allies are so important. You know, they make such a difference. So, you know, you were making so much difference to, you know, your brother's life. I agree with you. I think that there is a real problem at the moment. We feel that there has been a backstep. I think that's really why we need more allies to change things, because we are going backwards. Society is going backwards. You know, there was I mean, I work very closely with the mayor, and I do all the EDI for the councils and things like that. And she reached out to me, I think it was yesterday, and she showed me a post, and a girl had posted in a sort of Facebook forum, and she'd said, you know, I realise shop workers are really, really busy, but if they could possibly just not block aisles with all the Christmas stock, because I was in my wheelchair, I couldn't get around. And literally the whole way down the post, people said she was selfish. How dare she think about herself over Christmas? And I just couldn't believe it, you know, and I thought we really have such a problem, you know, and it takes allies to speak up. It takes allies to say, hang on, this is wrong. We shouldn't be thinking like this. We shouldn't be allowing others to say these things. And it's having that courage again to do that, you know. And I think as well, you know, I've advocated for, you know, thousands of people, including children, you know, going through education and things like that. And the parents have said to me afterwards, it makes such a difference that now they have a role model. They have somebody that they can look up to and say, wow, that's now what I can be when I grow up, you know, because they didn't have that before. They didn't have somebody, you know, they might see somebody on Coronation Street and think, well, I don't really relate to that person, you know, but they're seeing somebody that is actually going out there and making a difference, you know, and the parents are able to say to them, what about that? Why don't you do this? Why don't you go down this path? You know, so, you know, I think allies are amazing. I really do. You know, I think that allies' voices matter so much, you know, in the fight, and the more people we can get who will challenge ableism, who will speak out, who will learn about it and educate others, the more difference that we can make. You know, the more times that people amplify marginalized voices, share our experiences, you know, and just stand with us. It's about, you know, the way I always see it is that, you know, with marginalized people, I always think, well, hang on, you know, there is more of us than there is not. You know, if we all came together and sort of stood by each other, the difference we could make, we could turn society, we could make so much difference. And because we're all looking in little tiny sort of categories, go, well, that's not my community, so I'm only sticking up for that one. And it's like, no, we all need to come together and be a community, you know, and because, as I said earlier, injustice is injustice, you know. So, you know, I do think that unfortunately things are going backwards. I really do, but, you know, keep doing what you're doing. You know, you've gone into work where you're making a difference, and, you know, you're being that voice. And it's people like you that are making a difference as well. You know, it's people like you that are able to, you know, educate others, you know. So yeah, you know, I as a disabled person, you know, I am so grateful for any ally that we have. I really am, because allyship it's so important and so powerful as well, I think, because even if you think, oh, I'm only doing something small, but those small things add up, you know, they really do.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Deborah.
Okay. Thanks very much, Joanne, for that question. Of course, thanks, Deborah, for that, because it's great to have allies, and I think you have told us about the practical steps. Because so everybody that wants to be an ally, really, it's important, because we need to support disabled people, and a lot of things that Deborah has said will be very key in building that allyship. But any more questions, or any questions? No more questions for Dr. Deborah. Anything you want to ask? Now this is the time for you to ask questions. Okay, Danny.
Oh, hi, Deborah. Again, just to echo a lot of people have kind of ended that presentation. It was excellent and really inspiring. Can I just come back to, I've got a couple of things. really. You mentioned, and I don't know if this is part of your, you're launching something around this, or a paper or a book or something, but you were talking about how young people in particular, if we can get some of these messages in earlier with young people, that's a really good starting point to try and tackle some of the, young people feeling marginalised, etc., and community members feeling marginalised. If we can educate the young people coming through, that could have a big impact. Is there anything, are there any kind of initiatives or things that you're working in? Can you point me in the right direction? I teach on community development and youth work programs, so things like that I can bring alive would help bring this session alive for me. So any kind of resource or anything on the horizon that we should be looking out for in that area?
I mean, I think that's amazing. I think that was, again, allies are amazing. And I think for you wanting to do that with the people that you work with is wonderful, because I think that, when I became disabled and I was in my teens and I thought nobody's ever had this conversation with me. And I was quite horrified about that. And I think by the time that happens, your unconscious biases are already really quite set, so for me, I'm starting it really young. I'm starting at Key Stage 1 to try to get that message to them. For somebody, did you say you're working with slightly older kids?
I'm working within HE, but the program is community development and youth work. So we've got people on the program that work directly in the community, but they're also working with young people during outreach, centre-based youth work. Some people work in schools, etc. So they've got the opportunity to work with across the age ranges, really.
Right. So I mean, for me, it would be very much teaching them about ableism, because ableism is ingrained in everything. I mean, we think about it's in the media. We look at we've got Captain Hook, we've got Tiny Tim. Whatever's in the media is really unhealthy. And learning about ableism was really interesting to me because, and even internalized ableism, because, as a disabled person, you are meant to feel that you have to make yourself as normal as possible to fit in, with what everybody else expects of you, and people have low expectations of you. People don't think, people look at what I've achieved and they're like, oh, well, some people, it's almost like I didn't know a disabled person could actually do those things. You just think, oh gosh, And I think there is now quite a lot on ableism, but it's something that perhaps I didn't even know until I was probably about 30 about ableism. I couldn't put a name to what it was. And I think it's been quite an eye-opener, and I think as well, it's about teaching people that, we very much, I mean, there is a lot of models of disability, but we have very much gone from the medical model where we see that there is professionals that want to fix a disabled person. If they can't be fixed, well, we just look after them and we tell them what they need. And, and I very much believe in the social model of disability, which is that society is disabling you. If we had universal design, which is, level access, anybody can enter. Well, why would I be disabled? I could just come in and join in like everybody else. It's making people aware that actually, we blame the disabled person for not being able to enter that building, for not being able to join it. But it's society to blame. So it's society's responsibility because somebody made those decisions. Somebody chose to build buildings like that. Somebody chose to build houses like that and decide who was worth its, including and who wasn't. None of that was necessary. And I think it's about educating people and making them reframe how they're seeing it, that actually it's society is the one that has the responsibility for this, not the disabled people, because I've had it, where my husband's had it where he sort of said, well, we couldn't go here. And people have said at his work, well, so what? It's just her issue, isn't it? And it's like, it's not my issue, though. It should be society's issue for excluding me, excluding other people, So I would very much say, look into ableism and look into the social model of disability, and re-educate people about the social model of disability, because it just turns everything on its head, that actually we are all being pressured to to look a certain way, to be a certain way, and it actually should be the world that's adjusting to us. It should be an equitable world where, you know, we're all the same, where it's just a diverse world, you know, and instead we're seen as different, you know, and that's not actually how it is. It's just the world's been built to exclude us, you know, and yeah, get people passionate to the fact that actually, you know, everything has been constructed so it can be unconstructed. You know, these are choices. These are not things that are just set in stone. These are things that we can decide ourselves, and somebody's made those decisions. But moving forward, they don't need to make those decisions. You know, they can make a different decision.
Thank you. That's super. Thanks so much. Can I just get you quoted something as well? So if you can just clarify the wording, that'd be great. You said I've tried writing it down. So it's nothing about us without us, was it?
That's
When
it.
you were talking
Yeah.
about equity?
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, nothing
Yeah.
about us without us. Yeah, and it's just about including whatever we're talking about. You need to include those people in it, and to stop the hierarchy that historically has happened, where people have done policies and made decisions for other people on their behalf, which is, you know, it's like treating people like children, you know, and the only people really that can actually give you that information are the disabled people themselves. You know, they should be on panels, they should be in teams, they should be in leadership roles, because they need to be directing places, they need to be the one that's feeding into these places and making the difference. Because for too long we've seen that disabled people are not worthy of those roles, you know, and it's bizarre because, you know, being disabled has no impact at all on your intelligence, you know.
Exactly. No, thank you. I'll be using that, Deborah. I really like that. Thank you for your presentation. It was great.
Thank you.
Thanks, Danny, for that. I'm happy with the fact that many of us are, because a lot of great quotes by Deborah today. That's just one out of many quotes. So I'm happy that Danny spotted that quote. So well done, Danny, and of course, Dr. Deborah. I think Gary wants to ask a question.
Hey, Deborah. It's a fantastic presentation. It's a good job that people have got yourself as an advocate. But just to point out, really, that people keep looking at disabilities as being disabled, as in a wheelchair or anything like that. It only takes a moment to be disabled. You could have a heart attack, you could have a stroke, you could have Alzheimer's. All that impairs people straight away. And if people planned for that, then the world would be a much better place anyway. Plan to include rather than exclude, and put yourself in somebody else's position before you make any decisions.
Couldn't agree with you more. You are 100% right. You know, over 80% of disabilities are actually acquired later in life. And we don't, as a society, we retrospect things. We think, oh gosh, this person now has these impairments, so we must now try to get this really small old house and try to make it better, you know. And if we focused on, you know, inclusive design right from the outset, we need to have houses where we can all age in place. We need to have houses and buildings where everybody can be included, because it makes sense, you know. And okay, it might be more money spent in the short term, but in the long term, it's not, because everybody can join in. And I absolutely couldn't agree with you more, because it's almost like we're a very reactive society at the moment, and we need to be proactive. We need to be thinking about these things, you know, because as you said, it happens overnight. It literally, you know, if 1 in 4 people now have some form of impairment, you know, it affects so many people, you know, and some people it's more visible. Some people are able to sort of hide it from society, but, you know, questionably, should they have to hide it, you know, because of how they're made to feel? And yeah, you know, we absolutely, I mean, I know a wonderful architect, and she's really campaigns about, she sort of always says we have to go beyond that. We have to push beyond what at the moment what's in law, saying that, you know, with the building regs and things like that, because inclusive design benefits everybody, you know, because, you know, as I said before, we have a hierarchy of who can come in, you know, and who can join in, and it shouldn't be that way, you know. It should be that everybody, no matter what, can join in, can be part, you know.
Yeah, it's really good that you can do that. I mean, I've had the chance of being with disabilities regarding my own family. My dad had a stroke, my mum had Alzheimer's, so I've dealt with things like that. People say, you know, I've got a stair lift in my father's house, and say, "Oh, why don't you remove it?" And I'm thinking, well, one day you never know, you might need that.
Exactly.
Why
Yeah,
remove?
exactly. Yeah, I spoke to an estate agent actually a few years ago, and he said, "Oh, I tell everybody," he said, "to remove stair lifts before they sell the houses." You know, and I said, "Well, why?" You know, and he said, "Well, it would put people off with this sort of disabled equipment." Why? You know, we should be putting those things in place. So yeah, so everybody can age in place. So everybody, you know, has that facility available to them. And people aren't just constantly moved, you know, that as soon as you know, it shouldn't be a case that in the UK that if somebody becomes disabled, they're in a hospital bed and they can't go back home. You know, if we had houses where we could all, you know, all just access the house, you know, why do we need showers that we climb into? You know, all these things that are just disabling people, you know.
And then also, you know, it helps other people because they see it as an advantage rather than a disadvantage.
Exactly.
It makes that advantage extra for other people. So therefore, you're being more inclusive by including things in the first place.
Absolutely agree. Yeah, I absolutely agree. And you know, and as I said with the bathrooms, you know, why don't we have more wet rooms? Why don't we have more where everybody can just walk straight in, walk straight out? You know, why is everything a barrier to climb over to, you know, because you know, you can pull a muscle, you can trip when you're doing the decorating, and then it becomes a, you know, something that's disabling, you know, just anybody, you know. So there is so many different sort of, you know, we have where I live, mine's level access. Well, why aren't all houses level access? I've never had a problem with it. We've never had a flood in here. You know, it's fine. You know, we need to be thinking more long term. We need to be thinking about more what we can do to make things inclusive as possible to as many people as possible. Because you know, I can't go around to people's houses because of it. I have to meet people elsewhere. And just because I cannot get into their homes, you know, and we shouldn't be in a situation like that.
No, I agree. Yeah. Well, excellent.
Thanks very much, Deborah. And one thing you said, society is disabling people, isn't it? So if you look at it from that perspective, we should, rather than able people, society shouldn't disable people. So that's one of your quotes. So please, those are taking notes. As another quote by Dr. Deborah, the society disables you. But either way, so it's great. And thanks, Gary, for that and sharing your experience. And one of the things that you said, Gary, was many times it just takes one accident, just one thing, and you just get disabled. So many times when you look down on disabled people, you have to ask yourself, like, it's just one thing and your life can change forever. So that's why it's important that we are all equal and we know that everybody is the same, because we are all equal, and that's the idea for this. And of course, to try to keep the message going. I know there are a couple of questions, I think, by Uchenna first. Uchenna, you want to ask your question, and it's great to have you.
Yes, good evening. Sorry, I was having to juggle between a lot of tasks, but I've learned a lot, and what an impressive profile you have, Dr. Deborah.
Thank you.
I have two questions for you. The first is in terms of policy making, how will you describe the level of engagement, you know, from the government, private sector, and civil society wide today compared to years ago? How would you rate the level of engagement and the progress being made? And my second question is, you've done a fantastic work across the UK. And as you continue to, you know, grow and make more impact, are you looking at, you know, working with wider stakeholders across the globe to drive, you know, this awareness to especially third world countries where, you know, they don't have this much engagement and awareness, and it's pretty much difficult terrain? Is it something you've thought about, something you are working on, or, you know, a new desire in the pipeline? My two
Well,
questions.
yes,
Thank you.
thank you for your questions. So first of all, with the policies and things like that, there is some progress. I mean, I'm part of the regional stakeholder network, so we report straight to the Cabinet Office about all the aspects that affect disabled people, including policies and things. I personally would say that I mean, while that's there, I would say that the national government still think that they know better. I know I've had a lot of issues with housing, and I've spoke to sort of all sorts of the top government places. They don't know what the real issues are. They think they know, and they will tell you, well, this is what we're doing, and it's like, well, that's not the issue. Like Gary was saying, you know, we need to be making places so they are accessible in the first place. You know, that it's like they don't really grasp what's going on. So I don't actually think that they have a complete full understanding. So I think that's quite difficult where we're talking about national government. Local government, I mean, I work with our local council who are fantastic. I work with the mayor as well. I was working with the deputy CEO of our local authority. They are fantastic. They got in touch with me a couple of years ago and said, you know, we don't do anything for disabled people at all. We are a completely inaccessible town. Help, you know. And I got on board. I chair a group which we work with the council. And the difference is just wonderful. You know, they are so open to everything. They're open to our input. We have made all the town events, you know, accessible. We have changed policies. We have done, but that's very much their attitude. They are open. They want to change. You know, they send me their things and say, can we look over this wording? Is this inclusive wording? And I'll be like, no, let's change this. And they're like, thanks so much. You know, there's no defense. They're just like, wonderful. You can do so much when somebody's got an attitude like that. So, you know, from a local standpoint, wonderful. From a national standpoint, could improve. And with you saying about sort of more globally, I am contacted by charities in a lot. I get a few in Kenya. A few of them have asked me, you know, if I'd consider being on their board. I give them advice. I give them ideas. I sort of tell them which way they should go and what they should do. And I'm always more than open to that, because I think I'm a huge supporter of anybody that wants to get on board and wants to kind of help and support other people, and whatever I can do to encourage them, to help them, to support them in that journey, I do. So for me, I'm very much, you know, the majority of advocates, there is more now than there ever was, but they are more recent. I very much am so broad, but for a good reason. I want to be broad. I want to have that impact. And yeah, I think that, yeah, when sort of charities have got on sort of in touch with me and things like that, yeah, it makes me really pleased, because they want to do better, they want to learn, they want to see which way we can drive things forward. And yeah, so in that way, I would do more if I had better health. I think some of it, you know, my health is poor, so I only have like so much personal reserves, and a lot of the time I can be working from like 8 in the morning till 10 at night. Next morning, 8 in the morning till 10 at night, because there is that much, you know. It is quite shocking just how many people will come to me and say, can you help? I've gone to all these places, they won't help me, they won't, you know, and I'm desperate. You know, people having mental health crisis. You know, I've had people that have said, I've literally saved their lives because I came on board and helped them, and before that, you know, they were suicidal. So unfortunately, there is only one of me to spread about. So I basically do whatever I can for whoever I can, really. But I've never yet turned anybody away.
Thanks very much, Deborah, and thanks. At least we can see Uchena's face now, so that's good. So that's great. Uchena used to be our union president here, so it's great now. But now he's gone and he's making some big bucks where he is. So that's great to have you. But I think looking at the chat, something by Imran and saying very interesting and very real. I'm moved and I have to leave now to attend to my mother, who is a stroke patient and is disabled. So as we can see, many of us might not be disabled, but we're living with people that are disabled. And it's important that we're able to support disabled people. If I hand over to Lawrence, I think one question by Cheryl. I think Cheryl wants to ask a question. So Cheryl.
Hi. Thank you, Deborah, for, that inspiring talk. I think even your words were meant not only for disabled people, but for even us people as well. I found them to be very inspiring and very motivating. But my question is, you know, I just remember this quote on the train when I take the train, says that some disabilities are not visible. So, we can't see some disabilities. And in that regard, I am just wanted some of the common misconceptions about mental health disabilities and how can organizations better accommodate and support people with these disabilities? What are your thoughts on that?
I think that with mental health, I don't think they get the support that they should. I think there's a lot of unconscious bias towards mental health conditions, which I personally find very problematic. I think that they need to be doing an awful lot more. I think they need to be creating a safe space for people. I think they need to be getting rid of the stigma that is around mental health, because I think there is a lot that, if somebody is honest enough to say, I have mental health difficulties, they feel shamed, they feel less than, and we are totally to blame as a society for doing that to anybody, because nobody is less than, they need that support, and they should be applauded for their courage. I think that they have to lead by example, organizations do. I think that they should be providing networks, they should be speaking out, they should be providing I know, like, for example, it's a big taboo, mental health with men, especially companies that employ a lot of men, they should be making that less taboo. They should be speaking out about it and saying, look, we have these resources for you. Speak out, it's okay, normalizing it, because I think that's what a lot of this problem is we have made EDI so taboo that we need to get normalizing these things. We need to know the statistics. We need to know that actually, it's happening to so many people. Most of us, have people in our family who have some form of disability, mental health challenges. It's everywhere. But the fact is that people are not feeling safe enough to share. And I think, to me, that's the big thing, really. I've always been a very empathetic person. I've always been someone that people have felt very, very safe to share with. But then I've seen them share with me, and I've seen how they are with the rest of the world, and I thought that's really sad that they don't feel safe in society to be themselves, to share what they're going through. So I think, for me, I very much feel that as a society, we need to change. As leaders need to make it a safe space. We need to, remove the stigma. As well, having those people in leadership roles, having those people in senior roles, so you can look up and think, actually, well, that's okay, because I can see somebody else in the company with the same issues that I've got, with the same problems that I've got. So it's okay. They've still got their job. They're still respected. They're still supported. And until we actually see those role models, I think it's really, really challenging, but I definitely think we need to normalize things so much more. Because I've seen people treated differently because, they have a mental health condition, and yeah, it does make me angry. It really does. And they're not getting the support that they need either. I think, even in the NHS, they're given so many sessions and then they're just discharged. They come to me and they say, but I've still got the problems, and the NHS is like, well, you've had your 6 sessions. So, and it's terrible. We really need to look at things again. And the fact as well that a lot of them, they'll be waiting 2 or 3 years in a queue for those 6 sessions, So we need to be supporting each other. Even as friends, we need to be there for each other and offering that support and being that stability around other people so they know they can reach out.
Thanks very much, Dr. Deborah. And that's it for me. And it's been a pleasure having this conversation with you. And I'm sure everybody had, it was quite very informative, very insightful, excellent. And it was very enlightening as well, being able to share your experience with us. So I will hand over to Lawrence to continue. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Lawrence, you're muted.
Thank you so much, Dr. Deborah Lawson, for taking us through your very inspirational journey. I've learned a great deal. I think It takes courage. It takes, someone who is very authentic. It takes someone who is willing to demonstrate strength in vulnerability to share this kind of experiences. And I think we are better now than we were when we started this session, thanks to everything you've shared with us. I'm pretty confident that everyone on this forum is really, really leaving this place with a lot of excitement, but also we've learned a great deal. Thank you so much for the audience, for those in attendance. You've been with us, you've been patient, and you've really been active, asking questions, sharing your thoughts. Thank you so much, Deborah, for everything. I think, like you said, it's all about the society, and we as people who have taken part in this session, we need to go out there and change our attitude towards disability, to look at the whole concept of disability differently, to be part of the solution and not part of the problem. Thank you so much, Deborah. We're going to, download this recording and share it on YouTube. So for people who have not been able to take part today, to be able to, live that experience, this particular experience. Before we ask Professor Kristen Harrison to just give us a closing remark, I would just like to encourage everyone to continue to watch our space, the Center for Leadership and Empowerment, for future events, but also we've had some past events, so you can always go and watch these videos and take one or two ideas. Thank you so much for everything, and thanks to all the participants for your contribution, for your participation. So, Prof, without further ado, could you give us a closing remark, please?
I think I've almost said everything I have to say. Thanks everybody for attending. It was great to have Deborah here today. Dr. Deborah was insightful, outstanding, I was so, the truth is that I was almost in tears when she was. I've heard this before, but every time she says it, it just touches me, and I'm sure that it was a very touching one. And it's great to see this experience, and you can see how she has moved from where she is, and she's only going to get bigger. I always tell her that this is just the beginning of greater heights to come. So there are more accolades. Every time we talk, I realize that she has won another award, another award, another award. It's not going to stop. But this just shows you, for a lot of people, that yes, no matter what you're going through in life, never give up. Be determined, persevere, because you will achieve what you want to achieve. Don't let the society disable you, like Deborah would say. Rather, be the enabler. And I think that's important. So we learned a lot. So thanks everybody for participating. I know at this time, many of you are thinking about Christmas shopping or every other thing, but giving us your time around this is great. And we are happy that you were all there. And like Lawrence, of course, thanks Lawrence for being outstanding and everything you do, and every member of the CLE that is here. What we do is we try to empower. And one thing that Deborah said that is so important is we need to be the voice. So we as a center, we're going to keep being allies, keep pushing, let people know about this. So please share the video, share it across, let the government know, let the stakeholders know, let the parliament know. Because at the end, not just about ticking a box, we need to be able to build that the regulations enable more representation. I want to get to the level whereby we have many MPs that are disabled, because at the end, that's it. And I hope, although I'm telling Deborah, we want to see you in the place of power. Don't worry, we're going to support you when you go for it. But we need people like you to also be there, so that you can change the way the things are done, change the policies, change the laws. And that's what we are here for. And clearly that's what we're going to do as a center. But going forward, of course, we're going to have more of these sessions. So follow us on Twitter, follow us on LinkedIn. And if you want to know more about Dr. Deborah's work, also follow her on LinkedIn as well. She has a lot of things that she does, and you will get to know more. But thank you so much. The next series is going to be next year. So for those of you that celebrate Christmas or the festive season, Merry Christmas if we don't meet. But either way, it's great to have everybody. Thanks for everything that you've all done throughout the year. And I know we're all rounding up and it's a great evening, but thanks and see you all at the next session. So thank you, Lawrence.
Thanks, bye.
Thank you. Thanks a
Thank
lot,
you
Deborah.
so much. Lovely to meet everybody.
Nice.
Thank you.
Take
Nice.
care.
Thank
All
you.
right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye all.